Hello, my name is Matthew Lugatiman, and these are my top 10 tips/words of advice that I personally wish I knew before I switched to physics. So if you're thinking of switching your major to physics, or if you are thinking of going into college as a physics major, then this video is for you. Number one, the hardest thing to do as a physics major is not doing physics itself, but getting involved with physics. Be prepared to do a lot of extracurricular activities relating to physics, whether this would be doing research in a lab, being involved in your local physics club, or maybe doing some tutoring on the side. When you're applying to grad school, they're not only going to look at your grades, but they're going to see how involved you are. So make sure to have a lot of opportunities available to you. All right, so number two is that when you think of someone who is a STEM major, the stereotype is that you don't get a lot of sleep. And it's very common to encounter someone in your physics class who regularly gets around 4 to 5 hours of sleep. And it almost has become some sort of competition. There's an illusion that the less sleep you get, the more work you're doing. Where in the long run, it's not a really good habit to gain, and it's pretty unhealthy. Especially when you're joining a field that requires a lot of mental stamina and brain power. The necessary amount of sleep you should be getting is 7 to 8 hours every day. This will help with your memory retention and maintaining a stable consciousness when you're going about your day. Here's a personal anecdote. One time I had trouble sleeping and ended up getting only 4 hours of sleep. And the next day I tried to do my E&M homework. I found that it was very hard, and it is a lot harder to focus when you have a lack of sleep. I felt very sluggish compared to my regular problem-solving routine. The next day, I got around 8 hours of sleep, and I did my quantum mechanics homework. I found that I was a lot more intuitive, and I was cranking out solutions a lot faster and easier because I got sleep. The third thing I wish I knew before becoming a physics major was the idea that you don't have to start physics at an incredibly early age in order to be successful in your classes. I'm going to compare this to other careers, such as being an athlete. Typically, it's a lot easier to become a professional athlete if you begin training at a very young age. This is emphasized because of the early retirement age of professional athletes. When you begin doing, say, football at a later time in your life, it's a lot more difficult to become a professional when you've just started playing and you're already 18, 19, 20. However, the great thing about physics or any field involving academia is that the average retirement is around 60 to 75 years old, whereas in like the NFL, the average retirement is 27. So if you find yourself in the position when you think you're behind and it's too late to pick up physics, think about this tip and remember this quote. This is a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and this actually helps me get by in my day-to-day. And that quote is, "The power which resides in him is new in nature, and none but he knows what that is, which he can do, nor does he know until he has tried." So yeah, that was tip number 3. All right, so tip number 4, try to ask at least one question per lecture. This word of advice was given to me by my mentor. He told me that when you're asking questions, it shows that you're more engaged and you're caught up with understanding the material. When you find that you're not asking questions in class, you should take a step back and kind of question whether or not you fully understand the material. And remember, there are no stupid questions. And so the next tip, this one kind of bounces off the previous one, but you will often encounter times where people, mainly professors, will often expect you to know things that you have never heard of in your life. You should just know that this is very natural and completely normal. The best way to navigate around this is to ask a question about it, read an article about it, or watch a YouTube video explaining it. I'll give another quote. Confucius said, "Knowledge is to say what you know and to say you do not know when you do not." That is knowledge. It makes things easier for you, and it just makes life a lot more simple, straightforward, and honest. Tip number 6, this tip is particularly for students who want to get involved in theoretical physics. So if you're not interested in becoming a theorist, feel free to go on to the next step, or just watch it and maybe give your theorist friends a tip. So when you're going to be a physics major, one of the most common questions are, do you want to be a theorist or an experimentalist? Given the highly mathematical nature of theoretical physics, it is incredibly difficult for an undergraduate pursuing theory to find a way to do theory research. One thing that one of my graduate school colleagues did was a computational physics project before they pursued a PhD in theoretical physics. So going down a similar path, my current research project involves working with particle physics simulations. And this will give me the necessary intuition and physics knowledge I need to pursue theoretical physics in grad school. All right, so for number 7, when you're doing undergraduate research, be prepared to not contribute when you're beginning a research project. What I mean by that is you're probably not going to join a lab and publish a paper within 10 weeks. My professor told me that 80% of physics research is not really doing research at all, and mainly wrestling with, say, a bug in the code or taking the time to learn more about your research project. After that, he told me that the other 20% is finding creative ways to apply the knowledge that you've accumulated, and that's what makes the other 80% worth it. My next tip comes from my professor. I gained a lot of these words of advice throughout my physics journey. One day, my colleagues and I were interviewing him for an assignment, and we asked him what was the best source for physics students to have at their local college. And his response kind of surprised us. He told us that the other physics students were the best, and we were kind of surprised because we expected a different answer, but the more we thought about it, the more it made sense. When you're doing work by yourself, you need to make sure that you're caught up. The best way to check is to compare your solutions with other students and build a relationship. It's also a bonus to gain some new friends along the way of your physics journey. You do not need to be a lone wolf to be successful. So tip number 9 is to take your time with the problems you're doing in physics. One of my colleagues, he's very smart, one of the smartest people I know, told me a great word to describe the way to go about your problems, and he told me to ponder them. And you want to be patient with the problems and get to know them. In a lot of physics classes, it's better to have a deep understanding with fewer problems than have surface level knowledge with a bunch of problems. Yeah, take your time, be the tortoise, not the hare. Okay, the last tip is to be prepared for rejection. And this can apply to anything, but what I realized in the physics cohort is that everyone's getting rejected by things they've been planning to do or things that they've been looking forward to. And it seems like it's been a very common occurrence. So no matter how successful you are, everyone will face this painful reality at some point. Those are my 10 words of advice for future physics students, people who want to switch their major to physics, or even if you're still doing physics as an undergrad and you just want some more words of advice. Have a good one out there. Make sure to stay healthy and have fun. And yeah, thank you.